Kentucky blues. I'm a poor wayfaring stranger, wandering through this vale of woe. But there's no sickness, toil, or danger in that bright land to which I go. Thank you. It's wonderful for you to be here.
Yeah.
My special guest for a long weekend of nonstop collaboration on a multitude of projects, including what will be new future projects
Yes.
that have been born out of your
This
visit here and
Yeah.
the energy that has been generated.
It feels like every second and every step, just I experience magic and miracles
Mm-hmm.
On this land. This is my first time in Louisville, Kentucky.
You're getting better. Louisville, that's right.
Louisville,
Yeah.
And
You
corrected me
you
the
bet got it.
moment I arrived.
You bet got it down.
Right?
You bet. People.
Well, it's also the sound of the land and the river here, which is, before I even landed, when the airplane landed,
Mm-hmm.
before I boarded plane at Minneapolis airport, the storm was coming, the historical
Blizzard.
blizzard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And everyone told me, "You're not going to get out, Ping. You're not going to get out." I said, "I believe I will get out because I'm going to with my prayer flags."
Mm-hmm.
And so when I got to the airport,
It was empty.
it was empty.
Yeah.
Our flight was
I
the
saw the-
only
I saw
thing
the-
that was not canceled.
I saw your photo. It's like, this is great. This is the kind of stuff. This is the kind of story my life is made of.
Right.
So I understand this.
Right.
And you go with full trust
Yes.
that the creative forces of the universe will open the doorways for you.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Prepare the way.
Right.
And you will go into the unknown and be taken care of. It's like I've taken so many trips overseas to other countries and
Around the world.
and I
In this
would
universe.
often my airfare would be covered and I knew I had a place to stay, but some of those trips, especially early on, there was no honorarium.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I had no money because I've done everything I've done by the seat of my pants.
Yes.
The hope and a prayer. And I took those trips the same way with nothing in my pocket. But I had,
Right.
so I had my poetry, hoping that the events I had been invited to perform at, folks would buy some of those, so then I would have some cash in my pocket
Right.
if I needed it.
Right. Right.
And I
That's
hope people-
just like the way I landed in America in 1958. I had $26 in my pocket.
See, and having read your work, see, I knew this about you. So you live the same way,
Right.
with that same trust.
Right.
And once you make the commitment
Yes.
to, which I made
It's called conviction.
decades ago, you have the conviction,
Yeah.
enough conviction to make the commitment
Right.
to use whatever words you want to use. I came to say the creative forces of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Life is too short. I'm not gonna continue doing things I hate to do.
Right.
I'm gonna build a bridge from where I am at that time,
Mm-hmm.
taking one step at a time to where I want to be. It took me 8 years to do that. Sleeping 3 hours a night, working 2 and 3 jobs, going back to school, raising 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
But there was finally light at the end of the tunnel. And but the strange thing is that once I had made that conviction that come hell or high water, I was going to follow this path no matter what it took.
Right.
Then doors opened for
Yes.
me naturally.
Everywhere.
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 Unexpected,
Right.
just astonishingly surprising doors opened to me, and I walked through them with joy, exuberance,
Right.
pride, and
Right.
honor, and gratitude.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I want to say is, before the plane landed at Louisville,
Yes.
I already felt the magic from this land and from the river.
Yes.
So coming back to you, I immediately felt you are a Kentucky boy, you are a Louisville boy, right? And
I'm a Kentucky farm boy.
Right.
Who, I've home based in Louisville,
right,
in this area for. Even though I've lived other places like
right,
Iceland and Arizona, and I've traveled for months in other places, Greece, England, Estonia. I take Kentucky with me, my roots with me
Yes.
wherever I go, and there came a time when I moved to the Southwest and traveled through the Southwest and lived there, when the first time that I began to experience firsthand this magnetic electric energy that you just mentioned
right,
about your arrival here
right,
on the plane, I experienced that and discovered that the indigenous peoples of the earth say that there are positive and negative energies in the earth throughout the world. And so the Southwest is full of this positive, spiritual, creative energy. And that's where I discovered my voice through my dreams, lucid dreams, that took me back to my earliest childhood and my earliest memories that were really positive, because I left home with lots of anger in me about my relationship with my father and the way I grew up, and just not having been able to be myself. And on the one hand, I was ready to explore and meet new people. I just knew there had to be other people out there who I had things in common with, and there's so many people I loved growing up, but I didn't find that the other spirits who had this dynamic, creative energy. And so I began to meet people, and I've always been a searcher and a seeker, so then I had those memories of my childhood that were positive, and I began to realize and wake up to the fact that I had so many positive experiences with nature, in nature, I love nature, and with people. And as those experiences came to me, I wrote them down,
right.
and I began to find my voice as a writer. So I understand.
When is that? How old were you at that time?
It was in the early 70s.
How old were you? In your 20s?
Early
20s?
Yeah.
And so that you use that anger actually as the fire and energy to push you forward
Yes.
into the right direction,
Yes.
walk the right path
Yes.
for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that is part of the power of poetry and art, is to transform the so-called negative energy into the positive, to transform anger and fear into the fire, the fuel to keep us going.
Which is spiritual alchemy, which I have studied alchemy.
Right.
And yes, I've studied the alchemy of metal, but the real alchemy is spiritual alchemy, and it's the transformation of the human being from our basest of natures to our highest of natures and combining all that energy into one light being. That's my goal, is to become light. There's no space or time in light. And so the light embraces all of experience, including the darkness, and doesn't turn away from any of it. And so that has been my goal. And those awakenings started in northern New Mexico and Arizona. And then when I was invited to give 3 readings and this connects directly with what you were saying about your arrival here, because this place has some of that same energy. I was invited to give, I co-produced, I was blessed to work with Allen Ginsberg the last 5 years of his life. I brought him to Louisville. He was here for a week. 1,500 people came to the reading at the University of Louisville where I was teaching. And from that point on, when Allen left, he spread the word about me, about the work I was doing to birth a global literary renaissance, a global literary community, wherever he went, to people high and low. And that opened so many doors for me. But when he died, a year after he died, I co-produced with Al Aronowitz, who is the famous blacklisted journalist who put the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and the Rolling Stones on the map, and took Bob Dylan to meet the Beatles and with the marijuana to turn them on. But Al and I became friends in the last years of his life and did a lot of work together. But a year after Alan died, Al Aronowitz and I co-produced at the Band Shell in Central Park in New York City the Allen Ginsberg tribute. And I invited people from all over the world, people, editors, publishers, appreciators of Ginsberg's work to that event. And many of them came from countries and continents everywhere, including 3 folks from Iceland. The Minister of Culture had sent them. I was invited to give 3 readings in Iceland. And when the plane landed in this land I'd never been to but read about since I was a boy, because that's where Journey to the Center of the Earth by Jules Verne starts. That amazing journey starts in Iceland, over 30 active volcanic mountains there.
Wow, that's very powerful.
Newest landmass on Earth, and no place like it on Earth. But I felt that same magnetic energy that I had experienced in the American Southwest, and that is also present here, and that the Native American peoples recognized and honored.
Well, this is where buffaloes have been charging for thousands of years.
That's right. Millions. My sweetheart, Jen Bug, who grew up in Baltimore and on the Chesapeake Bay, came to Kentucky. She won a couple of academic scholarships to Center College, a private college here in Kentucky, and never left. Did nonprofit work since then. But her house is getting ready to be put on it. It's an old, my little riding cottage. It's 4 blocks from Jen's house, and it's right on the Buffalo Trace, where millions of buffaloes, not thousands, but millions would come through on their migratory paths, cross the Ohio River, and you can, when the river's low, you can see where the rocks, the stepping stones, where they jut out of the water where they crossed. And then the Native Americans used in their
they follow
migratory journeys. They followed the buffalo, and then the early European settlers, when they invaded this Native American land and wiped out 90% of the population, a few million people, and 90% of the 500 tribes. That was genocide.
That's it. That is genocide.
And we still treat the Native Americans in the most terrible way.
Yes.
And not enough is said about that to this day. So this is a crossroads, and it's a sacred place.
For life.
Just for life, for energy.
Yes.
I have known plenty of, over the years, people who have extrasensory perception and certain psychic gifts, healing gifts, who settle in this area. So there is an energy here.
Yeah, and this is the land that produces you, Ron Whitehead, and Muhammad Ali,
Hunter S. Thompson, Wendell Berry,
Johnny
Depp, Loretta Lynn, the mother of country music, Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass music, the Everly Brothers, who
all the treasures which I'm going to produce, translate the best writings, and also images from this land, and bring it to China. And I want to bring Ohio's river, maybe become like sister rivers between the Pearl River in China or the Yangtze River, the middle, the Sichuan. I have another place which could form sister river with Ohio.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I hope that happens.
Well, we have the conviction, right?
We do, and that's the most important. That's the most important thing.
Right, and things usually happen when I have the vision and conviction.
Same here.
And I know that's
When I was inducted as U.S. National Beat Poet Laureate at a big ceremony in Connecticut a couple years ago, and my friend, now 92-year-old, the amazing, legendary David Amram came. And
he came to the ceremony?
And he and Debbie Tosin Kilday, who's head of that National and International Beat Poetry Foundation, gave the talk for my induction. I had made a point to read about all of the state and international Beat Poet Laureates, and so I'd read up on you, and that was my first introduction to you, and then you contacted me. And I love to blow things up in the sense that when I start working on a project, it doesn't take very long before I want to make it be all it can be. And whether that's an event, whether it's a book, whether it's an album, whether it's an adventure, and so my brain just goes on this rapid fire, and then so when you contacted me and said you'd been doing some research, and so we initiated a conversation that has continued to grow, and so I read your work, I watched the Kinship of River films, and then I had the idea. I couldn't find an album, a recording by you of your work, and so I asked you if, as you remember,
I'm so honored.
Would you like to do a rock and roll music spoken word album? But this won't be your standard rock and roll album, with me and my band, the Storm Generation Band. And then you told me you have two sons who are in rock bands, and I did, and maybe you want to show them that mom can still
rock.
can still rock,
Rock and
yeah.
roll.
And so you said,
Oh,
hell,
they know
you
that. They
said,
know it.
Yeah,
They know
I figured
it.
they did. But anyway, you said, hell yeah. And so, by God. So my band worked on the music for several weeks now. And
it's a great band.
And
great studio.
They have,
yeah.
And Ping and I, you and I worked on the 18 tracks, the pieces for those tracks for since this conversation started 2 or 3 months ago. And so we finished that recording yesterday at La La Land Recording Studio, like the top studio in town where I've done other work and recordings, including an album, Never Too Many Sunsets, with my friends David Amram and Frank Messina a couple years ago. And it's just like real magic took place in that studio
Non-stop.
yesterday for
Non-stop.
hours, and we're both kind of crippled up by injuries, and so from standing and having that just entirely focused, intense energy for all that time, we're both still having, I've noticed you were having the same trouble as I have been, a little stiff on the walk today, so it's taken us a little longer to get into the smooth groove.
Well, I have a leg injury repeatedly.
Yes,
my muscle.
I know. Yeah.
Yes, I'm Chinese, and I'm damn proud. 5,000 years old. I made paper not to sow lies, but spread love and kindness. I invented gunpowder, not for guns, but for the wonder of fireworks. I invented printing for art and beauty, not for the hate on your t-shirts. I made compass to lead humanity out of wars towards peace.
I will not bow down, America.
And so I just noticed you have a Hunter Thompson quote about you. You want me to read it, or you want to say it?
No, you.
Okay. So this is what Hunter Thompson said about Ron Whitehead. I have long admired Ron Whitehead. He is crazy as 9 rooms, and his poetry is a dazzling mix of folk wisdom and pure mathematics. That's amazing
Thank you.
quote from my admired hero, Hunter Thompson, who is just as crazy like you.
Well, and one thing that having taught Hunter, having produced the official Hunter S. Thompson tribute in December 1996 and brought Hunter and his mom and his son and Johnny Depp and Warren Zevon and David Amram and Doug Brinkley, the historian, and so many other people. It was a historic 4-hour event at Memorial Auditorium on 4th Street. That's where Hunter wanted to have it, because when he was coming up, he grew up in the Highlands of Louisville, and all the hottest bands played at Memorial Auditorium. It's beautiful, holds a couple thousand people, standing room only, red velvet seats, and he wanted to stay at the Brown Hotel, this historic hotel. So I worked things out to put him in the penthouse, and everybody stayed there. And Johnny Depp was the only one. He flew in on his private jet, and he was the only one who paid his own tab for that trip. And so that's another story altogether. But it was 2 years later. I had this small press. I'd worked with Grove Atlantic on this book for 3 years, the senior editor, and the Beaver Dam Rocking Chair Marathon. And what I finally realized was he wanted a stereotypical hillbilly novel along the lines of Taylor Caldwell's Tobacco Road, and he would send paragraphs or pages X'd out, too experimental, and some paragraphs or pages circled perfect. But what I wanted that book to be is based on a true story of that same name, I participated in the Beaver Dam Rock and Share Marathon with over 100 people. But I rocked 89 hours and 55 minutes from Saturday morning until Wednesday morning.
Only you can do it.
It was really the beginning of my ultra marathons.
Right.
I've had so many in my life, and this part of my blowing things up, which Hunter blew things up, but I blew things up in the creative arts, in creative ways.
Yes, to awaken people.
I love to create temporary autonomous zones, like the 24, 48, 72, and 90-hour nonstop music and poetry insomniacathons I produced in the United States and Europe. The goal was to be all-inclusive.
Right.
To so many in the poetry scene, in the literary scene, in the art scene, the music scene. It's such a niche, if you're not part of my circle, what I'm doing, you're not worth a damn and all that. And it's just like, my goal from day one was to break down all those barriers and bring this street, the sacred fount, the ivory tower, the academics, even the boring academics. I want to bring your sorry asses in with the poets from the street and combine all those elements. I taught college for 20 years, so don't start talking to me about academia. You spent a little time there too.
I spent 21 years.
We both had some amazing experiences in the classroom and nightmares in regards to administrations.
And I'm banned by academia.
See, and I was almost fired
all the time
before my first year was up. and because we wanted to set everything and everybody on fire with the creative spirit.
Right.
We all have a non-stop river of creative fire flowing through us.
Yes.
And our role as fiery poets is to remind whoever wants to listen that we've all been conditioned from birth, and we can't blame anybody, finally, ultimately, not our parents, not society, because they're conditioned too, to think that we're supposed to do what we're told to do, and what society tells us is right and wrong. And that's all bullshit. This is somebody else's construct, and it's usually constructed by the powers that be to maintain control and stay wealthy.
With lies.
And with nothing but lies.
Yes.
And so I began as a boy to question all that, and finally in all my journey, my refusal to accept the bullshit brought me through one fire after another, one battle after another, relentlessly refusing, standing against all odds, to go my own damn way. Follow
the heart.
The heart.
Yes.
Because I discovered, in particular with the strangest experience I had with the Dalai Lama, that the heart is the truth tester.
Yes.
I knew that. I knew it since I was a boy. But we are taught that the mind is the all-powerful being, and
mind can be controlled and
the mind
smeared over, but not the heart.
The mind is weak.
Yes.
And the mind is important, of course. The mind is the master builder.
The mind can be controlled and manipulated.
But the mind is full of chattering monkeys and squirrels who, if we allow them, will drive us crazy, or it's also full of those voices that tell us, no, you can't. No, you're no good.
Yeah.
You're not a poet.
But the heart keeps pulsing.
But the heart,
eating.
Which is the channel, the doorway to our soul, our spirit, that reminds us constantly that we're on the wrong path, and let's get on the right path.
Yes.
Let's remember our soul purpose, our life purpose here, which is, without the creative fire and the creative spirit, we all become the walking dead.
Yeah.
That's what we're born in space. We measure space with
our
time,
heartbeat.
with time.
Yeah.
But if that's all there was, life would be metronomic, tick tock, boring as hell. But there's this third element called rhythm, and that's where the creative spirit lives. That rhythm comes. That's music, and that's poetry.
Yes.
Poetry and music
yes.
they're one and the same.
Yeah.
Ask any great musician.
Yes.
I've worked with so many of them. They all want to be poets. They have the greatest respect for poetry, the highest literary art.
Yeah.
And
which is our heartbeat in the end.
it is the heartbeat.
Yes.
And
the natives knows with their drum.
of course they do.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but the oldest, the most ancient, I'm constantly asked because I perform all over the world. I love all kinds of music. I grew up in a musical family, in my mom's side especially, but my dad's side loved music too. Daddy loved it. Music, even though I grew up with that old-time mountain hillbilly blues, which I still love, I love music from all over the world, all kinds of music, and I always have. So it's all those things.
Yes.
And so it's the time to listen. And listening is the greatest art of all.
From Kentucky he came to East Chicago rail yard to work. He was gone. And at night, after 14-hour days, Gideon's Bible and the cheapest wine warmed body and soul. Sacred ceremony and ramshackle bedbug, newspaper wall, beer sign, neon hotel within eyeshot of the yard. Not far to lumber on frigid morn. Early evening. Through the night, all night, the wind whispers, cries, wails, sings to her. And through the cracks of her attic walls, she listens, listens. And when the window blows, she turns an ear to the voice coming to her through the stillness of gnarled cedar and pine, blanketing like shrouds the old gray-weathered, wood-slatted farmhouse nestled deep in this cold, barren wilderness. And she turns an ear to the voice coming to her through the stillness of cedar and pine. And through the stillness she turns and looks at his gray railman's hat hanging limp from 8-penny nail on wormwood wall. His hat and railroad manual were all he brought home the last time. But that first Christmas visit from East Chicago and his new job, he brought her a blue calico dress and red sweater with pearl buttons carried on the train with gifts for all. He and they all proud of him, a man, no longer boy, but always hard worker of farm and mine in this pioneer Kentucky land. But now he returns again, so soon, unexpected. Returns, eternal presence, home for good. His body from East Chicago rail yards he comes, his body crushed between coal cars, coal. And like the bituminous gold shipped from Kentucky to foreign parts, he's delivered by train. Long, wailing whistles signals his arrival. Last stop of the L&N. And a year later, frail, tired, torn, she drifts through tears. By candlelight she sees his spirit at top of attic stairs, at foot of her bed, calming, real presence. He moves closer, reaching to her. His hand touches her forehead. Her eyes close, finally, to deep dream sleep.